Hi guys, here's Paula, the crazy ozone lady, and this will be another installment of ozone news. So this is something that I started a couple of weeks ago. So there are always something new that comes out in the realm of ozone therapy, oxygen, oxidative therapies, and in the past 2 weeks there were quite some interesting stories that I came across. So I wanted to share them with you. But before we begin, so just so you know, when you subscribe to thepowerofozone.com/news, and when you subscribe to the newsletter, then you will receive the full version, the full and uncensored version of the ozone news. So this should come out tomorrow. So because in this video I don't want to make it too long, so I have put here my my watch in front of me. And so I hope to do for half an hour maximum. But in the written newsletter, you will get basically more stories than I will talk about here in the live stream. All right, so let's begin. So the first thing is here a study. So this study here, let's see if I can zoom in. Can I zoom in? I cannot zoom in. Okay, like this here. Okay, so the study is called Hyperbaric Oxygen Therapy Increases Telomere Length and Decreases Immunosenescence in Isolated Blood Cells. So this is a study that has been conducted in Israel. And basically what they have done now, the study design was pretty interesting because it was a controlled and randomized study. So they had a control group. So one group basically received the hyperbaric oxygen treatments and the other did not. And this is a very good study design. And the members of the two different groups, they were randomly assigned. So this is another important aspect when you perform studies. And this is another aspect that tells you about the quality of the study. And so they took people who were older, so 35 healthy, independently living adults aged 64 and older, and they measured their telomeres and their senescent cells. Now, what are telomeres and senescent cells? So telomeres, it's basically, those are both markers of aging. So telomeres, if I understand this correctly, this is basically the length of the chromosomes. And so the older we get, the more of those telomeres we lose. So they become shorter and shorter. And so the length of the telomeres, they say, is a good predictor for longevity. So the longer the telomere, the higher the probability that the person will live longer. And the shorter they are, then the predictor is that the person will most likely not have a long life. And with those senescent cells, senescence, right? Senescent cells is exactly the opposite way. So the older we get, the more of those senescent cells we have. So it is better to have less senescent cells. So the younger you are, the less senescent cells you have. And so those are basically two markers for aging. And so what they found out, that those people in the group that received the hyperbaric oxygen therapy, that their telomeres were longer and the senescent cells were less than in the control group. And so their conclusion is that basically hyperbaric oxygen therapy is able to reverse aging. And this has been published in many different news outlets, in many different journals. So I am subscribed to Google Alerts, and this kept popping up and still keeps popping up in my Google Alerts. So it keeps getting published more and more. And so everyone sees this as kind of proof that hyperbaric oxygen can reverse aging, but I'm not so sure. So because The problems I see are those that they looked only at those markers. So, and we don't know how good those markers really are, how well they can predict longevity. And when you want to find out if a given therapy is able to reverse aging or not, then I think the most important thing that you need to look at is lifespan. And this is something that they did not do. And this is one problem that I have with the study. The other is that this study was funded by the Segal Center of Hyperbaric Medicine and Research. Okay, so this was a collaboration between the Tel Aviv University, but this private center which offers hyperbaric oxygen treatments. Okay, so this is a huge conflict of interest, really. All right, so now it is possible that hyperbaric oxygen therapy does prolong life and that it is an anti-aging medicine, but my point is that, in my opinion, this study is not able to prove this. So those are only markers that are dealing with here. Whether you are really able to live longer by doing hyperbaric oxygen treatments, I don't think that we know this yet. It is possible, but you can't make this conclusion based on this study. That's my take on it. Okay, but now hyperbaric oxygen, there were more stories that came out about hyperbaric oxygen in the last weeks. And so here, this is another one. Hyperbaric oxygenation, the treatment of traumatic brain injury by Robert Louis Beckman. And this gentleman, he says that he looked at different studies, at different papers, case reports, and altogether those were 7,500 different cases that he looked at of brain injury that were treated with hyperbaric oxygen treatments, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, and he said that he found that they can be very beneficial, they're safe and cost effective. So here he says, the history of HBOT, so hyperbaric oxygen therapy for traumatic brain injury, is littered with bad science, but evidence-based in clinical medicine data show the safety, efficacy, and cost-effectiveness of hyperbaric oxygen therapy as a standard of care that should be put on label and insured. And he says that unfortunately still many times DOD, so the Department of Defense, and VA, which is Veteran Affairs, I believe, and the Army, that they deny people with traumatic brain injury, they deny them hyperbaric oxygen treatments, although they have shown to be effective. So he calls for doctors and for authorities and for insurers to recognize hyperbaric oxygen treatment as the standard of care for traumatic brain injury. Not only traumatic brain injury, but also PTSD, so post-traumatic stress disorder, and concussion. And he says that hyperbaric oxygen therapy is able to heal wounded brains and returns patients to a life denied them. And it says here, hyperbaric oxygen therapy virtually eliminates suicidal ideation, an effective suicide prevention method. The patients also reduce their drug intake to nearly zero and experience 50% reduction in pain and time to withdrawal. So this is really remarkable that, just by breathing oxygen, pure oxygen under pressure, this is what hyperbaric oxygen therapy is, you can see such remarkable results in patients with severe brain injury. So this is something that I think should definitely be done. And the only reason why it is not is probably because there is no powerful lobby of practitioners of hyperbaric oxygen therapy, because I think this is really how legislation happens in Washington. You basically need a lobby, or you need some some powerful special interest groups that exert pressure on legislators, and if there is no such special interest group, and there probably isn't in the realm of hyperbaric oxygen therapy, then not much happens. All right, next story is, I found a very interesting, pretty crazy story. Well, I mean, I'm a pretty ozone junkie, but this sounded pretty crazy to me. So this was performed in Germany, or well, the study was written the paper was written in 2018, comes from Germany, and so okay, this is not really a study. This is really a presentation of 5 different cases. So what was done here is they talk about 5 different patients which had ozone, a direct ozone gas injected into their brain tumors. All right, so those were patients who had part of their skull opened, okay, and there was like, I think they must have installed a stent or some type of like a permanent access to the brain, and people then got injected oxygen ozone gas regularly directly into the tumor in the hopes to heal the tumor. And so those were in total, those were 5 different patients. One of the patients was still alive 4 years after the intervention, which was very unusual because the median survival for people with glioblastoma, this is the type of brain cancer that they were dealing with here, and this is one of the most dangerous cancers there is. So the medium survival for people who are diagnosed with glioblastoma is 25 months. But for the patients, the 5 patients who received the additional ozone injections, was 40 months. Okay, so the medium survival time was lengthened by 15 months, so by more than a year. But here is the surprising thing. So they received the injections. It was only 5 milliliters of ozone gas, and they received it only once a month. All right, once a month, 5 milliliters of ozone at a concentration of 40 micrograms per milliliter. And they saw significant improvement just from this little ozone, because really those are tiny amounts. And here you also have some pictures of people. I can really, those are MRI images. I can't really interpret them well enough. But yeah, so this is pretty interesting. And of course, when I read this, I asked myself, okay, I wonder what improvements they would have seen if, instead of giving them the injections once a month, if the patients were giving the injections 4 times a month, or if they were coupled together with ear insufflations, or also intravenous ozone injections. Because the problem with this type of cancer, with glioblastoma, is that it often becomes hypoxic. So here it says, so the cells exhibit a preference for hypoxia. And hypoxia is very, very bad for conventional ozone treatments like chemotherapy and radiation, because when or I believe specifically for chemotherapy, because when hypoxia develops inside the tumor, then they tend not to respond to the chemotherapy anymore. Okay, and this is another important part here. So basically, all of the patients received also chemotherapy, and some of them also on top of the chemo received radiation, and on top of that ozone. So it was not that they only received ozone. No, the ozone was on top of the conventional treatments like chemotherapy and radiation. All right, now next story. Okay, I just I just saw that I lost the next story. There was something that was issued by the FDA that I found quite important that I wanted to talk about. Okay, here it is. Okay, so now this does not have anything to do really with ozone therapy, but still it's something I want to talk about because of the FDA. I want to inoculate the ozone community to the ozone propaganda, to the anti-ozone propaganda that is often issued by the government and the big pharma manipulated government, because the government is really just the marketing arm of big pharmaceutical corporations, in my opinion. And so basically, okay, so here this is the story. So the FDA issued a warning about benzodiazepines. Okay, so benzodiazepines, there's drugs like Xanax, for example. So here it's Xanax, Librex, Librium. Those are all the different brand names that benzodiazepines are sold under. And so for the longest time, the FDA was kind of oblivious to the risks of benzodiazepines. And benzodiazepines, of course, are extremely dangerous, as it turns out. There's a statistic on, I believe it is the CDC or maybe the FDA, that there is, if you receive my newsletter, there will be a link to that statistic, to that website. I believe it is the CDC, and it shows basically an increased slope that shows an increased deaths per year in the US because of benzodiazepines, and also in combination with either alcohol or other drugs. And you see it's thousands, okay? So it's tens of thousands of people that died in the past 10 plus years because of these drugs. One such example is, for example, Professor Jordan Peterson, the father of Michaela Peterson. And he says that those drugs nearly killed him, and that the only way that he survived is because he went to a clinic in Russia, and they did some special therapies, some special protocols on him, and now he's mostly recovered. He's still not 100% back, but he's mostly recovered, he says. And so those are drugs which are really absolutely wreak havoc on humans. They can cause symptoms like, let me list them here. So catatonia, so basically the inability to speak, having a rigid body, repetitive and meaningless movement. So basically you're turned into a zombie, right? You cannot speak, you have a rigid body, and you do repetitive, meaningless movements. So you're like a robotic zombie, basically. You can also develop seizures, delirium, shaking, shivering, irregular heart rate, sweating, depression, hallucinations, thoughts about killing yourself or someone else, mania, psychosis. All right, and so this is really one hell of a drug. And so my point is, like, why am I pointing this out? Is because this is an FDA approved drug. Okay, so this has been fully tested and approved, and it went through all the safety protocols. And I'm sure that before the FDA said, okay, this drug is fit to be sold on the market, you know, that the company which produce, or the companies which produce the benzodiazepines, that they had an army of lawyers hired, and that they made sure that basically everything they did was according to the current laws and regulations, and they performed tests and studies and whatnot, right? So like fully regulated, FDA approved drug, and yet it's a killer. Like, this drug is basically a killer. So why am I pointing this out? Because again, this points out the hypocrisy, and because I want to inoculate people so that they are safe from this anti-ozone propaganda. Because the anti-ozone propaganda, like when you look up ozone therapy, when you look it up on Wikipedia, then like one of the first things that they mention, ozone is a toxic gas and it's not FDA approved and it's toxic. and it's not FDA approved. And so the message is here that ozone therapy is dangerous because it's not regulated, and only if it could be regulated then it would be safe and effective and everything would be in order, right? But here, benzodiazepines, we have one of the most stringently, regulated drugs, FDA approval, stamp of approval, and everything that you want. And yet they now have to issue a warning that this is basically that you can commit suicide, you can become manic, develop hallucinations, or even kill you, right? So the thinking that just because something is not regulated then it is dangerous, like ozone therapy is not regulated, oh my god, it's dangerous. No, here you have a very good example, and this is one of many, of countless examples that something is FDA regulated, fully controlled and legal, and it's just one of the most toxic things that you can take. All right, enough of my FDA bashing. Another story is, okay, this will be actually the last story. All right, next now let's go to some ozone product news. So Simplio3 has a Christmas sale, so they're offering 50% off on nearly all products until Christmas, until the 23rd of December, and this is this is something that is automatically applied at checkout, so you don't need an extra code. Nothing, it's automatically there. And so it's nearly all products are eligible for this discount. And so I looked at the different packages that they have. And so I really think I like this gold kit here. This is a pretty good deal here that you're getting. So you're getting here the Stratus 3.0 and with a lot of accessories that you can do basically all the insufflations. So you can do rectal insufflations, vaginal insufflations, you can do ear insufflations, you can do breathing, ozone bubble through olive oil, you can make ozonated water, limb bagging, you get some syringes, and you get a cup, so you can do cupping. So if you don't want to do like a full-blown sauna, you just want to treat just one part of your body transdermally, then you just put this cup here. This is this thing here, this cup, over the part of body that you want to treat, and off you go. All right, so this is one special that is going on right now, and unfortunately you cannot apply my additional code. I have a code Stratus, Power of Stratus, but unfortunately it does not work on top of this 15%. In case anyone was wondering, I tried it out, it does not. All right, now Promolife came out with a new product. It's the Nebule O3 Ozonite inhalation device. And by the way, you can find links to all the products in the description of this live stream. And so this is a pretty cool looking kit. I haven't tried it yet, so I don't know how well it works. But basically this is for anyone who likes to breathe ozonite. So if you like doing things like breathing ozone bubble through olive oil, then this may be something interesting. So this seems to produce a very tiny and very fine mist of ozonites. You see, like here on this picture here, and then you can breathe it in. And so instead of using olive oil, you use eucalyptus or pine oils. And this device ejects the resulting mist through the exit for inhalation. So I guess you just put your face close to this nozzle here, and you breathe in this mist. Okay, another good news from Promolife is that they have reduced their prices for the glass syringes, but I cannot tell you exactly by how much. But I think the most expensive one, the 100 milliliter, I think it used to cost over $100. Now, if anyone knows better, please correct me, but I think it costs either $100 or more than $100. And now it's $80. But Okay, I do know that they reduced the prices. I just cannot tell you by how much. But if you're interested in having glass syringes, I mean, this is a nifty thing to have. I have a whole collection of glass syringes. So this is a pretty cool thing to have. Now, I do not recommend that people who do DAV ozone injections, that they use glass syringes. For sure not if you're a newbie. If you're an advanced user, then yes. And there is a section in my book, DAV for the Super Paranoid, how to use glass syringes safely for DAV ozone injections, how to use the glass syringes. All right, more news is I set up a new group on MeWe. And so this is pretty cool because, you know, here on MeWe, this is really refreshing. So I set up an account on Parler and here a group on MeWe. And so anyone who's already a member of the Ozone Group on Facebook, then if you're interested, I suggest to join here on MeWe. And this is really refreshing because you don't need to worry what you're posting about. You can basically talk about all the thought crimes. You know, you can talk about the C thing, about the C virus. You can talk about lockdowns, masks or no masks, or different treatments for the C thing. It's awesome, right? And so within a few days, we already garnered over 100 members. So this is pretty a cool thing. Oh, and I posted there a newsletter by Dr. Frank Schoenberger and his take on the new vaccine. Also another thought crime that I'm not going to elaborate on here, but on MeWe we can freely talk about it. So this is a cool thing. All right, and the last thing, and this should be, I'm right on time, less than half an hour, it looks like it. So I have the first 5-star rating on my book on Amazon, DAV for the Super Paranoid. This is a print edition. And Christopher B was so nice and left me this 5-star review. He said, also her instructions are a great way to relieve your anxiety over ozone DAV if you have any fears of injecting anything into your veins. I highly recommend this book to anyone looking to improve their overall health. Yes, so check this out on Amazon. And that was it. That was it for now. As I said, if you're interested in the newsletter, there are more stories in this newsletter edition, more stories than I covered here in this video. So subscribe and you should receive the newsletter starting tomorrow and the day after. That was it, guys. Thank you very much for listening to the Crazy Ozone Lady. Oh, and by the way, nothing that I mentioned in this video and this live stream is to be taken as medical advice, right? We need to make sure that our overlords, our government overlords, who are always listening, that we keep them at bay, that we keep them away. All right. Thank you very much. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.